Friends of Cosmic Agency, my name is Gosia, and today I have a very interesting and very important video for you that many of you have been waiting for a very long time, and I have been waiting to publish this video for a very long time. It was given in November last year. However, we didn't publish yet because there are other videos that came in a way. They were also very important to publish, and also because we were not sure if Yazhi finished sharing everything she wanted to share, because this topic is very long. It's going to be divided in two parts. This is part one of the video, and the next part, equally important, will come very soon. So yeah, we decided with Yazhi that this is it. I mean, the topic could go on and on forever, but for the moment, this is enough, and it's ready to be published. Also, in this video, which is very important, you will see that we are actually changing the name Holographic Society to something else, thanks to Dor Kalel, who suggested the name change, because this word holographic, even though it contains elements of what is meant by the concept of holographic society, it's not really adequate, and it's a bit confusing. Me myself, for example, I never fully felt aligned 100% with that term, and I'd rather use the new term. I think it expresses better what is meant here. And for those of you who are new and don't know what is meant by holographic society at all, there is a video in my channel that I made a few years ago. The information was given by Swaruu of Erra, who is not with us anymore, who is not in the orbit anymore. She gave this information, and it describes how the holographic society model works outside Earth, because this is the most common social political model on which extraterrestrial races, societies are based on. And of course there are variations, because it adapts itself to each culture and each society, which are different. But the most common model is so-called Andromedan stepped holographic society model, and it bases itself on the principle that everybody in a society has equal rights and shares the same type of access to all the information and all the privileges, let's say, of the society, and is equally important when it comes to taking decisions. The society is based on councils, different stepped levels of councils, and of course I also understand that there are different experts in different areas. If you want to know more, because I don't want to prolong this video, extend this video more than necessary, if you want to know more, look up that video. It's going to be also in the description box, a holographic society. And today we are sharing this video about if this type of holographic society model is something to be possible to implement on Earth, because that's why actually a lot of people are waiting for this video, because they want to know the steps to implement this model on Earth. So Yazhi is explaining how it develops, what is that model, and can it be adapted to Earth at this point in time, and what is necessary for us to be ready to implement this type of society in our society, in the human world here on Earth. Well, thank you very much. Watch this whole video and wait for the next part, which is going to be equally important, and I will see you in the next video, I think, or maybe not, we'll see. Okay, bye bye.
Originally in Spanish. The term holographic society is not something we started to use ourselves. This term is already used on the net on a large scale. But looking at that word with a critical eye, talking with Dor Kalel here, We saw that it is not a good word to describe advanced societies of many non-human cultures, including Taigetan. Holographic society comes from the Greek holos, complete, and gram, message, as Anekita once said. Here the word holos is correct, but gram doesn't fit and only lends itself to confusion. According to Dor Kalel, giving him credit, the correct name should be holistic society, as in complete society that includes all its members actively on equal terms. That is the adequate name. So I see it as a very good idea to change the name we use to holistic society, because in this way we leave behind other people with their definitions of the name holographic society in favor of a correct name that better describes our concepts, that will also help to distinguish us from the others, since the information does differ drastically. So the name of these societies and the topics we will give below will be holistic societies. How does a holistic society work? My description is based on the fact that a society and a culture will always be a reflection of the people that form it, from the point of view not only of their conscious intentions, but also of their collective unconscious. People are their society. They do not live in a society. They are also their life and their experiences in it. If a group of people in power installs on a people a holistic society by way of imposition, even if the people say they agree, it becomes communism or something similar to it. A holistic society arises and is born out of the mentality of a people. Each people will reflect their own mentality in the governments that govern them. If the people are disinterested in taking part in the resolution of the problems and structural dynamics, and in all that is necessary to sustain a culture, only people with their own interests will emerge among them, who will begin to dominate over the people, as can be seen in detail in the book Animal Farm by George Orwell, 1945. You can see there the degradation that occurs when a people is liberated from the oppressors, in this case the farmer, and some animals take control over the farm little by little, until they become as or more tyrannical than the farmer himself, the pigs in the book. I recommend reading it to understand in detail how a people, by being permissive and believing in demagogies, fall back into the same mentality they had before being liberated, which in turn forms a new tyranny. Now, why does this happen? I mention it because it is the very reason why a group can't come and impose a holistic society on another, even if those people so desire, because they will naturally degrade to the same tyranny that oppressed them before, as described in absolute detail step by step in that book. A book that I read I do not know how many incarnations ago, and I still remember it. I don't even know who I was back then, I think Swaruu Papriyananda, Swaruu too. This degradation of a people liberated from oppression and with all its members on equal terms towards falling back into the same or worse is due to the mentality of the people themselves, being that attempts to impose or establish positive political models to the interests of all, of the masses, on earth, and in the same absolute tyranny. Examples of this are Rome. From republic, it becomes empire with the assassination of Julius Caesar by Brutus, who was working for Cleopatra and Mark Antony. French Revolution, which comes out of monarchy, to fall back into something similar with Napoleon Bonaparte. American independence, which establishes a constitution with clear and firm rights for the people that gives them abilities to defend themselves from the formation of new tyrannies, with the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms with a view to prevent new tyranny, which degraded into a capitalism where those who controlled the companies began to dominate over the financial market until in 1913 the Federal Reserve is established, which basically takes away all power of the democratic government over the Treasury Department, thereby causing, at the same time, every person in the USA to become legally a corporation that is and can be absorbed by other larger ones, thereby creating a totalitarian tyranny. Bolshevik Revolution of 1917-18. The implementation of the communist political model based on Marxism, where a government establishes total control over the assets of the people and administers the resources to give each individual what that same government believes he or she needs and deserves. This model degraded to state capitalism, where those in the ruling party take all the wealth at the cost of total and tyrannical exploitation of the people, with its apogee during Stalin's government. The list is long, and I only mention a few of the many examples of the same problem, since it seems to show that the peoples, the normal people, are destined to always fall under some kind of totalitarian government, without a truly equitable political model. What I perceive on Earth is that the basic mentality of life there is that of scarcity of resources, which in turn creates the need for something or someone or an institution, government, to manage those few resources with whatever political model, being that on Earth nothing is ever enough. Whether there are enough resources or not, the perception is the same, that there is a lack of things, food, new objects that make life interesting and worth living. I see that this is not only caused by the imposed might-control mentality that favors the consumer society, which fuels the profits of the companies that manufacture or manage such consumer goods, but is mostly based on the mentality that people need something external to them to justify, enjoy, and make life itself worth living. People needing something external to them to fulfill their existence is a direct consequence of the concept of materialism and determinism, where only the material exists and has value, and cause and effect as an inevitable consequence, victim mentality. This worsens when a monetary value is added to the material, because the very values of the people will revolve around this material value, blinding them to the other points without material value, thus creating that life itself is worth a little if it's not destined or used to produce goods or services that produce more monetary value. With this, the whole spiritual part decays to just being used as another method of control over the masses, to guide them to behave in ways that are productive for those in power, which ends up destroying the very life of people and the animals and plants around them. An example of this is animal suffering, where pets, such as dogs and cats, or free-living wildlife, have no value to society other than what is given to them as monetary utility. I emphasize the dogs and cats as the most direct example that comes to my mind that suffer abandonment and cruelty in the streets of the big cities, because being many and useless, they lack any value, blinding people to their needs and their great suffering. In the same way, everything alive becomes cheap, therefore without value, without importance, and the material things manufactured industrially increase in value. As a consequence of this is that the whole spiritual part of people is degraded in favor of materialism, which in turn, as a direct consequence, will only bring much suffering that will perpetuate the perception of lack and scarcity. But as the materialism, determinism in which they live as a mentality dictates that only what is real, tangible, and with monetary value matters, the only way that such people will have to seek relief from that feeling of lack in their lives is with the acquisition of more material goods that will give them a temporary satisfaction through a feeling of achievement, acquisition, but that will inexorably create the need to acquire more material goods again, to feel that sense of achievement, relief again. Mentality entirely programmed by those who wish to continue perpetuating the society of consumption, materialism, and determinism. And this leads me to declare that the only way to transcend the vicious circle described above is with the spiritual, ethical, and moral advancement of a people. For a people to seek existential satisfaction within themselves, in what everyone has inside, the happiness generated by self-satisfaction in cooperation with their loved ones, community, would completely replace the need to seek happiness in material things, as a first factor or step towards forming the necessary mentality for a holistic society. The spiritual, ethical, and moral development of a people, their level of consciousness, is the very basis of a holistic society, and without it, simply will not be generated, will not appear. A truly holistic society generates itself. No one has to impose it. No one has to dictate how things are or how things should be. Rather, the very social and cultural dynamics of a people will be born by itself as a direct reflection of its consciousness, spiritual, ethical, and moral mentality, especially a truly holistic society. So, a holistic society cannot be implemented upon a people, nor can it be given to them as base information to form one, because it will only reflect the same mentality of the one who provides that information, which will not be applicable or appropriate for the people who receive it. The truly holistic society will generate itself, without the need to learn anything about how it works, nor to give classes to the people from the angle of giving information, as one would give a descriptive class about how a democratic or communist, socialist, or monarchical political system works. The only thing that generates a true holistic society is the spiritual, conscious, ethical, and moral advancement of a people, where they first develop those bases. And already with a mentality of ethics, morality, and very advanced spirituality, the members will begin to relate to each other with those three bases. And the result is a society or political model perfectly in accordance with the level of advancement in those three areas. It is the result of everyone within that society reaching the same high degree of advancement, or at least similar in terms of their personal variations, but always within the same framework of understanding that makes them cooperate with each other. A people will reflect its degree of ethical, moral, and spiritual advancement directly toward its political model. From a non-materialistic point of view, based on the models of mind, thought, integration, love, cooperation, understanding that cooperation and mutual support is what generates a personal and cultural advancement of a person and a people, is the basis of holistic societies. On earth, much is taught, to the point of abuse, that one should live in a mentality of service to others and not in a service to self. Even very advanced spiritual teachers and contactees claim this. It is said that progressive non-human races live in service to others, and regressive races live in service to themselves. It is not that simple. Not on earth. Living in service to others must be an inseparable part of seeking service to self. On earth, imposing or forcing or teaching people to live in service to others has become one more method used by spiritual teachers and contactees and people who claim to have high consciousness, high above the average people, for the exploitation of those who wholeheartedly desire to implement a new, more equitable society on earth with a view to the development of a new holistic society. That is to say, living in service to others within a society where the whole dynamic of interaction between people on average is one of service to themselves and their survival will only generate slaves with good intentions who end up working for free for the benefit of those who claim to be more advanced or have more convincing power over them. They end up being told that they help the cause when they are only mind-washed and controlled slaves, exploited for their good intentions. To be able to help in a service to others mentality, you need to have a full understanding of what it is you are helping, why, and to what end, with what dynamics and reasons. All with a framework that such help does not interfere in the lives and primary needs of those people providing service-minded help to others. Otherwise, they will only be exploited by people who call themselves spiritual masters, ascended, or people supposedly with much spiritual advancement. This point above is an example of how forcing only one part or one aspect of the mentality of people living in holistic societies on people living in other social political models will only bring chaos and exploitation again. A holistic society is what comes out as a result of the interaction between each other of a group of people with a high spiritual, ethical, and moral advancement, under the principle that a people will have the political system that reflects its own mentality. If a people, like the people of Earth, live in a victim mentality, in determinism and materialism, they will only create, form, or manifest the opposite concept to themselves. A people with an oppressed and dependent mentality will create those who oppress them and on whom to depend. One side will create the other. This is the very mechanism of the formation of governments, regressive entities and races and systems of oppression that are formed in the manner of tulpas and egregors reflecting the human mentality. If a people feels exploited, it will create its exploiters. The only method of creating a holistic society is to move forward the spiritual, ethical, and moral advancement of a people, to expand their consciousness. What people should be focused on is those three elements, and not the forced implementation of a new political model, because this will only degrade into socialism, communism with state capitalism. And that is not a holistic society. When a people develop a sufficiently advanced ethical, moral, and spiritual advancement, naturally, without any problem, they will inevitably form a society and culture perfectly in accordance with their level. If the level is sufficiently advanced, it can be said to be a holistic society. Being that I must make it clear that it is not a political model to follow, but only is and can only be the result of the ethical, moral, and spiritual advancement of a people, of its personal and collective consciousness, its direct and inevitable reflection, the total of their collective unconscious. The first step to follow to form a holistic society is the ethical, moral, and spiritual elevation of a people. And this, in the first instance, is achieved with the direct and unrestricted access of the people to all the information available to their group or culture. Learning all subjects, whatever they may be, is the first step. That is why one must study everything, learn as much as possible, listen to all opinions and angles equally, with the formation of one's own responsibility for one's own personal advancement, and for the formation of the personal concepts that each one takes in as true, as what is real and what is not. This means that equal importance should be given to studying all points of view and then forming one's own opinion. Therefore, you should not follow anyone who imposes or wishes to control or form a monopoly of truth, for that will lead you away not only from spiritual advancement, but from the formation of a holistic society. You must manage personal resources, time and energy, to filter the information that is useful to you from that which is not, thus filtering the people you listen to from those who do not nourish you. Remember that the framework of reality, of what is true and what is false, and the very values of ethics, morality, and spirituality of each person are and will be the result of the average of the ideas of those with whom they live, talk to, and listen to. One should develop the individual responsibility to decide with whom to live.
And how do you promote the spiritual, ethical, and moral advancement of a people?
As I started to say, they must learn everything they can learn. But for that, they must first have the interest and the intention to do that. To learn all that can be learned, continuous and objective learning, without the formation of attachments to information models. That is, with the flexibility to incorporate new ideas to the framework that forms the personal reality. Reality must be approached using the best data available to each one, with the mentality that nothing is fixed, and that such descriptive models of reality, parts or as a whole, are only temporary until better data is available and one's own better mental models are developed. Not having fixed ideas, or only have as a spiritual model to embrace the constant incorporation of new data, which form and change our perception of reality. That is why you should never follow the advice of anyone, with or without authority of any kind, who dictates that you should not listen to other people or sources of information, because it will limit you to a fixed database and therefore manipulate it to the interests of those who claim to have greater spiritual, ethical, and moral advancement, stopping the formation of your own and personal base. A truly holistic society will be the result of this free-thinking mentality of a people. A highly educated, ethical, moral, and spiritual people become impossible to be controlled by external agents, and at the same time will create a social model according to the exact and particular needs of that society, creating harmony and not chaos. A people with high ethics, morality, and spirituality will defend itself, and it will create its reality according to what it is as its own entity. Thus it will manifest it. Its society will be its own egregor. Within the framework of understanding why a holistic society or any ethical, moral, or spiritual model cannot be imposed, is that no person can understand anything that is outside the contextual framework of his own understanding and the limits of his own consciousness. That is to say, for a person to understand advanced concepts, he must have in mind and fully understand previous elements that give him a support and a basis from which to start to understand major concepts, whether metaphysical or technical. Therefore, it is not possible to explain something complex to someone who does not have the necessary previous basis for its breakdown and subsequent incorporation into his person and consciousness. Each person or group of people must first develop these foundations. Therefore, they must advance in consciousness, spirituality, morality, and ethics before they can aspire to form a truly holistic society. This means that they must form a series of societies according to their current level, but have the flexible foundations that allow them to move towards a holistic society without stagnating in previous stifling and militant models such as those known on Earth. First, develop spirituality, ethics, and morals. Then the society, according to your level, will emerge on its own. So the main focus is on developing those three critical elements and not on forcing a political model that cannot be implemented on a people, because when a holistic society is imposed, it automatically destroys itself as such. It ceases to be. Thank you, Yazhi. I have a question. You said above that on Earth there is this mentality of scarcity, materialism, etc. But I feel that by the mere existence of the system as it is on Earth now, with money, having to work to survive, it will be impossible to eradicate this mentality from human society. Because it is one thing to implement ethics and all this in the society that has everything and replicators at home and free meals, than in the society that has nothing if you don't work for it. So, is the eradication of system based on money and work for money the requirement to have a really advanced holistic society? Yes. Because you enter into a vicious circle that you are in as a planetary people. So we enter into the realm of what I'm trying to describe in my last words, the need to develop political transition models with direction and intention towards the development of a real holistic society. This means that in order to get out of a vicious circle such as the one that afflicts humanity, there must necessarily be an external agent that changes the direction or dynamics that cause such vicious circle, which again leads us to the need for non-human tutors, members of real holistic societies and formed by anthropomorphic beings and with high empathy and understanding, especially with respect to the human situation and condition. However, such mentorship does not necessarily have to be given directly, overtly, but as spiritual intervention under the table, as it is already happening or has been happening in the last 70 years on Earth and accelerated since the year 2000, with the arrival of whole new waves of starseeds and step-downs in all their modalities, degrees, and variants. As for the monetary system, while the need for a new, fairer system for all is evident, there is a danger that the dynamics of George Orwell's Animal Farm will be generated again. Being that I do see the eradication of money possible with some transition, and only because I recognize that most people on Earth do not understand how it is possible to function without it. But yes, it is possible. But it is possible if you change the base mentality that forms the need for money. And that is the mentality of lack, that there are not enough resources for everyone. And this is formed by the idea or need to satisfy needs in a material way and not in a spiritual way. That is, people need a lot of things to be happy and not much inner wealth. This would then be one of the first things to change. Like, for example, that people are truly happy because they learned a new language, and not because they have a late model car as an aspiration of satisfaction and purpose in life.
But there seems to be little effect of that outside help.
Because they have countered that form of outside help with direct methods of control over the population, with a view to stopping the spiritual breakthrough that many call the Great Awakening. So there is no longer time for the starseeds to develop influence over the Earth social matrix. And so again, we get into the topic of some form of direct intervention being necessary, even if it is still under the table, but in a more direct and expeditious way. Because if there is something we do not have today, is time. And this is difficult to understand for non-human races living in other time frames of perception. Even though such intervention or external inspiration is necessary, the people of Earth should not wait for that to happen, nor should they hope to receive such help, which, as I have described above, whether or not it is sufficient, is already underway in the form of incarnated starseeds and other variants of subtle extraterrestrial presence present there. I feel that ethics and morals must be well defined, because there are different types of ethics, I imagine, and they change according to levels and interests, etc. Also, what do you recommend practically for people that they should not create models, political and social structures of such a society yet, but focus on developing spirituality, ethics and morals first? Yes, I know that they should strive to create a transitional political model that will allow them to work out the necessary components while those three elements of the people mentality develop. But that political model is not a holistic society, but only a stopgap, temporary. The problem here is that any transitional political model that is formed will again be under the conditions described in the text above, in that it will only reflect the average consciousness of the people themselves. The model that many would think could serve as a transitional method would be socialism, which we have seen does not work, because socialism or communism is definitely not a holistic society. Remembering that the moment a group imposes a social political structure with the idea that this is a holistic society on another group of people, it will cease to be a holistic society immediately, destroying the concept. So the only way to defeat these problems is with the advancement of consciousness, ethics, spirituality, and morality of the group of people in question. Those 3 points are so critical that without them, a holistic society simply cannot exist. That is another problem I have to talk about. Spirituality, ethics, morals are just words, and their meaning differs from person to person. So a basic framework should be made to guide the definition of these 3 points. So here it would already be intervention on my part or on our part, because I would be imposing my own definitions of ethics, morality, and spirituality on the human race, which opens again to what I also said above, the need for some kind of mentoring from a non-human but anthropomorphic and highly empathic race.